Good morning. So I'm going to spend a few minutes giving you a little bit of an overview of multi-access edge cloud, which by another name you could call CORD if you wanted to. It's basically the umbrella that we've all been motivating, all of the different pieces that we've been building. And I'm going to start with an exercise that we are currently in the middle of. This is not an RD. You could kind of think, I suppose, CORD is kind of an exemplar platform, but we're trying to understand what needs to be done next beyond all the projects that we already have underway to inch us closer to actually having a multi-access edge cloud. And so we are now in Venn diagram mode. So if you think of this as the holy grail of what we're working towards, it defines our universe, right? We want multi-access. We want to build it out of white box infrastructure. We want to take advantage of disaggregation, virtualization. Those are the principles that kind of scope this project overall. And we already, of course, have a lot launched. So it's an exercise in figuring out what is it that we need to more narrowly do next to get us, again, closer to that ultimate goal. Well, of course, we've got CIBA. And so on the wireline access side, we have a project. You've heard about it. And don't necessarily try to understand all the little bits and pieces. This is part of our internal discussion trying to organize the world. But there are some aspects of CIBA that are intrinsic to CIBA, and some of them are pulled in from other projects. So that's the wireline side. And of course, there's also the 5G side, now on the access on the RAN. And while ORAN isn't a strictly ONF project, it is part of the larger ecosystem, and so we're certainly drawing on it as well. And as you heard a few minutes ago, the thing that brings those two kinds of access technologies together is COMAC. And so trying to converge aspects of wireline with wireless. And there's bits and pieces inside of COMAC that didn't belong to either CIBA or ORAN. But of course, there's bits and pieces of COMAC that fall under the CIBA umbrella or fall under the ORAN umbrella. And of course, there's also Trellis, which brings in the leaf spine fabric, and it has some apps that run on top of it, and it's based upon ONS, which of course is going to be shared. And if I could do my Venn diagram in a third dimension, you would see everything under ONS having to do with the next generation of that and Stratum and so on. But this is roughly the world that we have established today, and we're making progress towards all of this. So that kind of begs the question, what's left? And so that's the exercise we're going after right now. And of course, the edge functions, for some definition of edge functions, is going to be part of that. We're not application builders per se, we're platform folks. So we're trying to understand what we need to enable that next round of edge native applications. And of course, we're going to leverage what's already there. And so we will indeed leverage ONAP and Acrano. But we're starting to tease out what are the other issues that need attention. And so one of the things that clearly is going to need attention is we're going to be living in a multi-cloud world. It's not strictly going to be one edge. It's many, many edges, and there's many clouds upstream from that from those many edges. So multi-cloud service mesh is going to be part of it, we understand. We also understand that we're at a collision now between VM-based VNFs and cloud-native functions. And we've already seen that as we try to bring these various pieces together that we run into problems. And we haven't paid as much attention to multi-tenancy as we ultimately need to. It was originally one of the requirements for CORD when we got started, but it kind of slips away a little bit as you make progress trying to deliver functionality today. And ... because we don't know for sure as we move forward exactly what we're going to discover, what the gaps are. So this is a bit of a gap analysis that we're undertaking. These are just conversations going on with the partners and the TLT and various folks in the community. This is not a formal thing. It's not been blessed as an RD. In fact, it's sort of unclear to us whether MEC is ever truly an RD because it's always going to be aspirational. It's always going to be the thing on the horizon that we're working towards. And as we get closer to it, sub-projects will come into focus, and then those will get spun off probably, likely as RDs and exemplar platforms. All right, so we have some hint as to where we're going to go. The problem, if you will, is this is such a big and very active space. As I'm sure you're all well aware, edge computing is the big deal right now. And so one of the things in the ONF community that we're trying to understand is what is it that we uniquely have to bring to bear on this? And that will help drive our priorities. So again, we're not going to boil the ocean. We're trying to pick our fights, if you will. And so the focus, we believe, and this makes complete sense, is because we're focused on the access network. It's those problems that are unique to having access technology at the edge. So this is not a vanilla edge cluster running Wi-Fi. This is what happens when you have access technology at the edge as well. And again, when you approach it that way, you don't want to throw things out completely because then you've come up with a solution that's so narrow it's not widely applicable. So we want to simultaneously have the scope and all the dimensions in our head, but we don't want to necessarily solve the nth most important thing on day one. We're going to start with the most important thing and then work our way down. And we're going to assume that as progress happens in the larger edge cloud ecosystem, good things will happen down on our priority list, and we'll just simply be able to take advantage of them. But where do we need to uniquely focus? And again, nothing official here, but if you think about it clearly, so I've listed 5 dimensions to the space. There are probably others, but these are the ones that are sort of on the top. Mobility is going to be there because now we're dealing with an intrinsically mobile technology when we incorporate the access 5G. And so understanding how the interaction between the edge cloud when the functions that you've pushed out to the edge need to account for the fact that whoever it is they're talking to has just moved. 2, distributed. This functionality will not just live in one edge cluster, but will need to be distributed across the very, very, very edge, including on-premises, all the way back upstream, potentially into the public clouds. Number 3, slicing. That because we are now dealing with subscribers that are paying money to attach at a certain quality of service and a certain customized functionality, we're going to want to slice the capabilities of the network, and that will be clearly is going to be a factor in this. 4th, heterogeneity. Some of these functions are implemented in servers, running in containers, some in VMs. Some of them, as you've heard, will be programmed into the switching fabric. Some of them will be programmed into GPUs. Some of them will be programmed into TPUs. So we need to account for that heterogeneity. And even though we may not, as a first order problem, care about TPUs, we do care about the switching fabric because we are a little bit unique from what a lot of people are talking about with edge cloud in that communication is still a first-class citizen here. We do need to connect people. And finally, again, multi-tenancy will be a factor we need to keep in mind as we move forward. So just to put a picture in your head to try to visualize what we're talking about, we're no longer in the world where broadband needs to be mobile. As soon as you do computing at the edge and you have functions that have been pushed out to the edge, then you have to account for the possibility that as the devices those functions you're communicating with move, the functions have to move with them. And I didn't mean VM migration or anything like that. There's a lot of different approaches from a technique point of view, but abstractly, you have to account for mobility in these edge clouds. So let me just wrap up by saying that of those list of potential problems at the top, clearly mobility is something we have to keep in mind, but we have undertaken a first attempt proof of concept because we do understand that we are going to have to deal with multiple clouds, and it will be a distributed service mesh. So service mesh, if you have not heard that term, it is a very hot topic in the cloud world. Go look into it. They're building service meshes. They tend to be just a little bit different than ours, the way we think about it, because we, again, are so focused on communication services in addition to compute services. But this is a service mesh for the 5G case. And the red boxes are implemented in containers, and the blue boxes are implemented in the switching fabric. So we have a mix of those two. And it is also the case that some of those now run at the access edge. So that's the qualifier, by the way, we put on it just to be a little bit distinguish ourselves from just random edges. We have an access edge. It's an edge with access technology built into it. And then some of those functions can live up in the public cloud. And so we're moving a lot of the control plane for the EPC up into the public cloud. And this is now then an exemplar that we can start to push forward and tease out some of the issues. We've got a CDN running at the edge, but that is a stand-in for many different possible edge services. And we've got a video archive up in the cloud, and that's just a stand-in for arbitrarily many cloud services. So this is a proof of concept that we're pushing forward inch by inch to try to tease out the issues that we're going to have to address. And this whole multi-access edge cloud will be a little bit more made official and formalized in some form or another. This is really just a preview of where things are headed. And so with that, we'll go on to the next speaker.